What is up, everybody? Welcome back to TNK. Taylor here, and today we're taking a look at the PlayStation VR aim controller. Now, with the release of the PlayStation VR, as most of you already know, the only peripherals we got with it were the already existent PlayStation Move controllers, such as these right here. But unfortunately, as we saw in previous generations, as games progress and FPSs become more popular, first-person shooters, gamers are looking for that little bit extra. Well, here's where Sony granted that wish. They came out with the PlayStation VR aim controller. Now, taking just a quick look at it, it's not quite as aggressive as their previous peripheral was, where I think you could actually pop the Move controllers in. This one's an all-in-one design. As you can see, the nozzle type is actually one of these little squishy balls, and it lights up for the tracking from the eye camera. Now, as you find with the DualShock 4 controllers, this aim controller charges with a USB Type-C on the bottom, plug in just with the regular controllers. Now, the release of the PlayStation VR came with the release of Farpoint. So far, the first PSVR first-person shooter on the market that uses the VR aim controller. As the VR aim controller becomes more popular, I'm sure more games are going to start implementing use of it. Unfortunately, Farpoint, you can only use the VR aim controller, you can't use the Move controllers, but you can aim with a DualShock 4 controller if you wish to put a controller up in front of your face to aim. Now, with Farpoint and the PlayStation VR release, they came out on the same day, Tuesday, May 16th. You could buy them bundled together for $80. If you were to buy the VR aim controller by itself, you're looking at $60, plus an additional $40 for the game. Quickly looking at the back, you have your normal nomenclature of a PlayStation controller. You have your X, triangle, circle, and square, as it would be found on the layout of the DualShock 4 controller. You have what's in the center, an analog stick, which effectively in-game is your right analog stick. On the top part of the tube, you've got your middle touchpad track button, whatever you want to call it. Does not have the touch feature, but it works as if you were to depress that middle button on the PlayStation controller. Right above that, you have your, I guess if you want to call it, your on-off switch, or to turn on the controller and connect it to the PlayStation 4. On both sides of the controller, you have an R1 button, so it is ambidextrous. Depending on how you're holding it, you can hit R1 on either side, depending on how you're playing. Obviously though, I understand they made this so it would be ambidextrous because you're aiming a gun, but when you're playing a controller, there's not ambidextrous controllers. So you buy a DualShock 4 controller, it is the way it is. So you're still, regardless of if you're left-handed or right-handed, you're still used to pressing the X, triangle, and stuff with your right hand, regardless of if you're left-handed or right-handed. So before we get into the cons, we will bring that one back up. Now you have your trigger button, which the trigger obviously acts as the R2, which is found in most FPS and shooter games in general. R2 is how you shoot, which is what the trigger is mapped to. In the front of it, trying to get a good look, you have your D-pad, and which would be your left analog stick, as well as your share and options button. On the front, you have your L1, L2 for use in-game with whatever it might want you to do with it. Looking at pros for the controller, it is the first of its kind for the PlayStation 4 generation and PSVR, and it is a huge improvement. It obviously provides you a peripheral to use in-game, aim down like you would be using a real gun, and it provides you that extra element to get immersed into the game. It is very responsive, hadn't had any issues with the trigger. As far as I found in Farpoint, the joysticks work great. It actually works very well to get away from the on-rail shooters that we have been seeing on PlayStation VR. So you do have freedom of movement. And of course, like I said, it's giving you that hand-eye coordination, precision that you're looking for rather than using a controller. What I'm really excited to see is games such as like Call of Duty, or even maybe a new IP coming out, using this and making it competitive multiplayer. As we found on Farpoint, there's really only a co-op mode right now, but I would love to play some PlayStation VR Call of Duty with this peripheral and really bring it down to skill and not like aimbots and such like that. So when you're shooting a person, you are literally shooting at a person in a virtual 3D space with this gun. I think that would be very neat and get rid of a lot of the stigma behind the 10-year-olds playing Call of Duty and destroying everybody, because welcome to real skill. I don't know, we'll see. I think it would be interesting. Now, let's get to cons. There's not very many for it. Talking about cons of the VR system itself, such as the motion tracking on the camera, I'll leave that for another video. Not gonna really talk about it here. I just wanna specifically look at the VR controller's cons. So the back part of it with the trigger and where your right analog stick would be is actually very comfortable. I have no issues with that. Maybe some people have an issue with the design of the PlayStation VR. It's kind of cumbersome, kind of large, and it doesn't really feel like a real gun. But I think it's ergonomic. I think it's a family-friendly controller. So if there are other games that may use this, someone's gonna go to the store and not be like, oh, I'm buying a gun for my son. It's obviously looks like a controller of some sort. One major gripe I have is this front little control panel right here that would be your D-pad and the options button, and it's the layout. I understand why they did it, such as the back right here. It's directly on the center, so when you're looking down it, it's right there. Except they did that with the front panel as well. When you're holding the controller, if I can get kind of good view, it's kind of weird to hold your hand directly straight on it instead of kind of cupping it like you would a normal gun. Cupping a normal gun, if you've ever used one, it's kind of something like that, It's strange to have your hand directly straight so you can use it. And you can use it off to the side, but again, it's a little weird. I wish they would have offset that to the left a little bit. So rather than holding it directly down the center like that, your hand is actually in a more natural cupped position, and the D-pad's sort of on the left-hand side of the tube. I get it, they tried to make it ambidextrous, but again, as I previously mentioned, a DualShock 4 controller only comes in one style. That is with the buttons for the X, triangle, etc. on the right-hand side and D-pad on the left. So regardless of if you're left-handed or right-handed, you're used to that layout, which would be the same on this controller. X, triangle, that such is on the back. There's no way to remap this yet. So you have to use those buttons on the back, which is still gonna be, I guess, your left or right hand, but if you're using your left-handed, you're now technically throwing off what you're, if you have that muscle memory of playing a controller, because you're in a VR space, you can't see what you're pressing. I don't know, maybe some left-handed players who have this can speak on it. I would love to hear it. So let's look at a little bit of some in-game Farpoint gameplay, and you can see the VR controller in action. So this is just to give you guys a little brief introduction. So you can see I'm holding the aim controller in a 3D space, and you can take a look at the gun. Oh, so cool, so fancy. And pull the trigger, your scan options, aiming down the sight. Alright, so we're in the game, looking at the controller. You can aim down the sights, as you can see right there, you get your little red dot, which is super cool. So otherwise, if you had the PlayStation joystick controller, you'd have to like hold it up playing like this, and that's not how I want to play this game. But okay, so you've got your
Dr. Tyson, if you can hear this.
You've got the left analog stick, which is your movement, and you got your right analog stick, which is your kind of like looking around kind of thing. So you can shoot them. You can get precise if you want to. Like I said, this is just a good implementation for the first of the system. Tracking is really smooth, have no issues. It's almost point and shoot just because of the controls. If you have good hand-eye coordination, more than likely you're probably not going to have an issue. But it's very responsive. You get the rumble when you shoot. Like I said, you can aim down, you can get them. Get the little spiders, overheat. You jumped at me. Oh, you got me. Shit. Nobody said I was good at this game. So guys, that pretty much wraps up our overview / my personal review of the PlayStation VR aim controller. If you haven't gotten it yet, guys, I recommend going and purchasing it. Now, granted, this does kind of raise the price point that you have to spend to get into PlayStation VR with having to buy one more peripheral. That's, the upwards of, $60. But I think this one is completely worth it, especially as we start seeing more implementations of, first-person shooters, games that are really going to use this, which on the Oculus side and such like that, as far as I know, they don't have a gun controller. They use the Move controller. So even if we could just get some where they implement the actual Move controllers into the gameplay, that would be great. Obviously, the issue is on the Move controllers, you don't have an analog stick. You only have buttons. You only have buttons, so there's no way to, there really wasn't before this came out, there was no way to actually control your character via analog stick or anything like that before this came out. So it's going to be very interesting to see where games go now. Farpoint is a great first start, and it's an excellent avenue to provide for other companies looking to see, hey, how can we do this? Well, now we already have the aim controller. All you have to do is put out the content. But guys, I want you to remember that, yes, this is $60. Yes, you might have a PlayStation VR. Is it worth it? Show support. Obviously, if there's a demand for a product, they're going to continue making software and such for it. And that's what we really need to see. This is a great start, and I recommend it to everyone. So, guys, thank you for watching. As always, please like, comment, and subscribe. Leave some comments down below what else you want to see, what you want to see on the PlayStation VR, or just in life in general, guys. I always appreciate you guys watching. Casey appreciates it too. And stay tuned for more videos. We have a ton coming, reference the VR controller, VR in general, video games, photography, etc. Guys, I appreciate it. You all have a good rest of your day.